According to the FBI, there have been 160 active shooter incidents in the United States between the years 2000 and 2013, resulting in over 1,000 casualties, including 486 who were killed. Those are alarming numbers. But what's even more concerning is that over the past 7 years, the number of incidents has increased from 6.4 incidents per year to 16.4 incidents per year. Are you prepared to respond to active violence on campus? How will you react? What will you do until a first responder arrives? This video will enhance your survivability during an active violence situation by addressing methods of increasing situational awareness and mental and emotional preparedness, considering options and tactics for responding to an active threat, as well as methods for mitigating the potential for active violence.
The average response time for police to these incidents is about 3 to 6 minutes. By understanding some simple guidelines, you'll be much more prepared to respond to one of these incidents.
If you look around campus, you'll see people everywhere talking on their cell phones, listening to music on their headphones, or texting. Unfortunately, they are totally unaware of what's going on around them. One of the first steps in being prepared for an active shooter incident is to increase your situational awareness.
Situational awareness is being aware of what's going on around you, who's around you, and what's evolving around you. It's particularly important in today's environment.
Let's practice some situational awareness. Take a look at the room you're in right now. If you had to run during an active shooter situation, what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of the room you're in?
First thing to consider is, does the door lock? How does the door open, to the inside or the outside? Are there windows adjacent to the door? Are there exterior windows? What are your alternate evacuation routes? How many doors are there in the room? These are all very important considerations to think about when you think about your environment that you're in.
One more step in preparing for an active shooter is preparing your environment and your coworkers. If possible, set up classrooms and offices in a manner which increases situational awareness. Familiarize yourself with students or coworkers who have special skills such as military or first aid training. Use their skills as assets to the response. Consider methods for evacuating mobility impaired or non-ambulatory individuals. Discuss a meeting place should you need to evacuate. What if you had to hide in the room you're in? What are some of the advantages and disadvantages?
So some other considerations are, is there a viable hiding spot to house a number of people in your environment? And what can actually be used to barricade the door?
By watching this video right now, you've already taken the first step in mentally and emotionally preparing yourself. By simply thinking about the stress of an active violence situation and considering how you'll react, you will experience some of the stress of an active shooter incident.
This is probably the most uncomfortable thing we talk about. It's probably not natural for most of us to think about fighting an individual that's armed and looking to take our lives. So we're trained that if you prepare your mind to think and react in a certain way, the chances of thinking and reacting in that way when the time comes are greatly increased.
When we experience a fight or flight sensation, sometimes induced by stress, we often experience tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, loss of fine and complex motor skills, and the inability to think clearly. One method of dealing with this is a technique called combat breathing.
Combat breathing allows you to regain your senses to make clearer, more effective decisions. It's a technique that's very simple. Essentially, you take a deep breath in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, and then you let it out for 4 seconds.
Finally, if you had to fight from your location, what are the advantages and disadvantages of your location? Take a moment to look around. What could you use as a weapon? What would you do? Because you haven't been trained in the ways to fight an active shooter yet, let's hear what our expert has to say.
So when we talk about weapons in this sense, we're talking about water bottles, keys, purses, book bags, and books, anything that can be used as a projectile to throw at the threat as the threat comes through the door.
More specific training on how to fight an active shooter will be provided in Active Violence Preparedness Phase 2 training. The old strategy of responding to an active shooter situation was simply to shelter in place. However, a new, more dynamic and effective practice has been developed. It's referred to as Run, Hide, Fight. This set of responses was developed by the Houston, Texas Mayor's Office of Public Safety and Homeland Security and is now endorsed by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Active shooter incidents are dynamic and constantly evolving incidents. It's for that reason there's really no one answer for every situation. Applying the concepts and guidelines of run, hide, fight, exercising situational awareness, and considering the totality of the circumstances will help you determine the best response for your situation. If an active violence incident is occurring, you should gather information to help you decide whether you should run, hide, or if you have to, fight.
The best way to gather information is using your own situational awareness to determine the location and proximity of the threat. If you determine that the proximity of the threat is too close, you may determine that your best course of action is to hide and prepare yourself to fight.
Other ways to gather information are from public address announcements, text messages, social media, and COD alerts, which you can get at the employee portal at inside.cod.edu. The most common way to gather information is via telephone. If you don't have cell service, you'll need to use a landline phone. But be aware that using the phone can often expose you to the threat. A landline phone may be near a window, and speaking on the phone may draw attention to your voice. Text messages are a great way to gather information because you don't have to make noise, which may alert yourself to the threat. If you have information related to the description, location or direction of travel of the threat, or location of victims, advise the police by calling 911.
So when you describe a suspect to the police, you should always describe them from head to toe, from top down. So you may say that he's a male white, approximately 37 years of age, with a bald head and a really awesome looking beard, dressed in all blue. So it's always top down description.
If you determine that the threat is not within close proximity to you and it is otherwise safe to do so, run.
If you determine that your best course of action is to run, you need to make sure you bring a weapon with you. The purpose of this is to ensure that if you encounter a secondary threat, that you're prepared and you have some sort of recourse when dealing with that threat. So if while running you encounter a threat and you decide to continue to run, you need to make sure to run in a zigzag or irregular-like pattern.
Remember, when leaving campus in an active shooter situation, you'll want to leave on foot and not in your car. If everyone else uses a car, traffic will form gridlock. Finally, another situation to consider is evacuating from an elevated level out of an exterior window. If you need to evacuate from an elevated level, you'll need to consider what you might be able to do to minimize injury as a result of the fall.
If you consider evacuating from an elevated level, you should consider what's underneath you. Is it grass? Is it mulch? Is it trees? Is it asphalt or concrete? You need to coordinate your fall with a more forgiving, softer surface if possible.
If you've made the determination that you cannot safely run, you'll need to hide.
The first thing you want to do is lock any doors and cover any windows, if possible. Next, silence all cell phones. If the door does not lock or there's a window adjacent to the door, you'll need to consider barricading the door. If the door opens in, it's easier to barricade. Just stack as many heavy things in front of the door as possible. If the door opens out, it can still be barricaded. If the door has a pneumatic door check, it can be tied closed with a belt or power cord. Another way to barricade a door that opens to the outside is to cluster together as many tables or chairs as possible so they expand the width of the door, and tie the legs together and lash the cluster to the door handle. Another method of barricading a door that opens to the outside is to physically hold the door closed using a belt by threading the belt buckle through the door handle, standing away from the door, and using the adjacent wall as leverage.
While hiding, consider alternative evacuation routes and call 911. Move out of the doorway, stay low to the ground, gather any weapons or projectiles, and finally, put yourself in a position to surprise and neutralize the shooter should they enter the room.
Finally, you need to come up with a plan to fight or neutralize the threat, and make sure everyone in the room is clear on the plan should the shooter enter the room.
You need to consider the real possibility of having to defend yourself and others. Part of the mental and emotional preparation is convincing yourself that if faced with the necessity to do so, you will fight and you will survive.
If the threat enters the room while you're hiding, you may have no other choice but to fight for your life and to enhance the survivability of others.
More specific training pertaining to fight will be made available in Active Violence Preparedness Phase 2 training. But remember these key points.
If the threat enters the room, you should use your stockpiled weapons to basically bombard the threat as he comes to the door, to take away his vision, focus, and aim, and allow a group of individuals to overwhelm, overpower, neutralize the threat, and then secure the weapon.
Finally, when you have the shooter under control, call 911 and tell the police where you are. When police arrive, follow their commands closely. Here are some other items you'll need to consider in an active shooter situation. When police arrive, they may have their weapons drawn and they may point them at you. Make sure you show them your hands and comply with any directions given. If you have information pertaining to the location, description, or direction of the shooter, communicate the information as quickly and succinctly as possible to responding law enforcement. You may be subject to a pat-down. This is to ensure that the campus is secure and that there are no additional threats. If you locate a weapon belonging to the threat or the police, do not carry or brandish it. Secure the weapon and notify the police as to its location. Again, for more specific training pertaining to fight, see Active Violence Preparedness Phase 2 training. Remember, prevention is key. Many active violence situations could have been prevented if someone would have notified law enforcement about something they saw or heard before the incident occurred. According to the FBI, the most common pre-incident behaviors have been observed to be stalking or harassing behavior, verbal or written threats, and physically aggressive acts.
Hello, my name is Sue Jarek, and I'm the Dean of Students here at College of DuPage. You have just been learning some techniques on how to react in the event that there is an actual active violence situation on campus. Remember, if you believe an individual is an immediate threat, contact the College of DuPage Police Department. But I would like to also make sure you know about a group on campus, the Behavioral Intervention Team, more commonly referred to as the BIT. The BIT is a group of trained campus professionals who provide early intervention to individuals from a position of care and concern. The BIT provides centralized and preventative strategies and resources for students, faculty, and staff. You are the college's eyes and ears, and we rely on you. If you see behaviors which are odd, disturbing, or disruptive, notify the BIT. To file a report, simply go to the college's main webpage and type BIT in the search. This will take you directly to the online Student Concern Incident Report form. Thank you. With both of these approaches, we can be a better prepared and safer campus.